Welcome to our deep dive into partition and reunion under Hindu family law. In this video, we'll explore how joint family property is divided, who's entitled to share, and the legal processes involved. We'll also look at the concept of reunion after partition and how the law treats such situations. Whether you're a student, legal professional, or simply curious about family law, this guide will clarify the complexities of partition and reunion. Let's begin by understanding what partition means and why it's a significant event in the life of a Hindu joint family. Partition, according to Midikshara law, involves two key aspects: severance of status or interest and the actual division of property according to specified shares. This process is known as partition by metes and bounds. Essentially, partition crystallizes the fluctuating interest of a coparcenary into a specific share in the joint family estate. It marks a clear shift from joint ownership to individual entitlement, setting the stage for further legal actions and rights. Understanding this definition is crucial before delving into the details of what property can be divided and who can claim a share. Only coparcenary property is divisible during partition. If a property is indivisible by nature, such as animals or furniture, it may be sold and its value distributed among coparceners, or valued and retained by one member with the amount credited to their share. Family idols and places of worship are not divisible. They may be held in turns or assigned to the senior member, with others allowed access for worship. Rights of way usually remain joint unless specifically allotted. If partition would destroy a property's intrinsic value, compensation is given instead of a physical share. For dividing the joint family property, certain deductions must be made. These include joint family debts, personal debts of the father not tainted with immorality, maintenance for dependent female members and disqualified heirs, marriage expenses for unmarried daughters, and provisions for funeral ceremonies of widows and mothers. These deductions ensure that obligations are met before the property is distributed among coparceners, maintaining fairness and legal compliance in the partition process. Partition can be demanded by various members of the joint Hindu family. Sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons have the right to demand partition, even against the consent of others, except in some regional schools like Bombay. Daughters became coparceners in their own right after the Hindu Succession Amendment Act 2005. Afterborn sons and daughters, illegitimate sons with limitations, adopted children, minor coparceners through guardians, and alienee purchasers of coparceners' interest also have specific rights to demand partition. Each category has unique legal nuances. Afterborn sons and daughters are considered in two sets: those born and begotten after partition, and those born after partition but begotten before it or in the mother's womb at the time of partition. A child in the womb at partition is legally treated as in existence and can reopen the partition to claim an equal share. If a child is born after partition and the father has separated, the child is entitled to the father's share but cannot reopen the partition. The same principle now applies to daughters after the 2005 amendment. Illegitimate sons among the three regenerate classes do not have a vested interest in property and cannot demand partition, but are entitled to maintenance from their father's estate. Regional differences exist. Madras and Allahabad high courts allow illegitimate sons of Sudra to enforce partition against legitimate brothers but not against the father, while Calcutta High Court grants a half share compared to legitimate sons. The Privy Council clarified that illegitimate sons are not entitled to demand partition but can claim maintenance. Adopted children are treated as natural-born children under Hindu law. They can demand partition anytime after adoption, and are entitled to a share equal to that of a natural-born child, as per the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956. This ensures equality and fairness in property division, reflecting the law's recognition of adopted children's status within the family. The adopted child's rights are protected, and their share is not diminished compared to other coparceners. Minor coparceners have the same rights as major coparceners, but due to their immature intellect, the court acts as parens patriae to protect their interests. A guardian or next friend can file a suit for partition on behalf of a minor. The court must ensure that partition is for the minor's benefit. If not, partition will not be allowed. This safeguard ensures that minors are not disadvantaged or exploited during the division of family property. Alienee, or purchaser of a coparcener's interest, can demand partition if the coparcener has the power to sell their share. This applies to both court sales and private sales. The alienee steps into the shoes of the coparcener and can exercise the right to partition, ensuring that their investment is protected and they receive their rightful share of the property. This provision maintains the integrity of property transactions within the joint family system. Some members of the joint family may not have the right to demand partition but are entitled to a share if partition occurs. These include the father's wife, widowed mother, paternal grandmother, and coparcener's widow. The father's wife receives a share equal to that of a son and can reopen partition if not allotted a share. Widowed mothers and stepmothers also take equal shares to sons. Paternal grandmothers and coparceners' widows receive shares under specific conditions, ensuring their financial security. Shares are allotted according to specific rules during partition. On partition between a father and his children, each child takes a share equal to the father's. For example, if a family has a father and 3 sons, the property is divided into 4 equal parts. When brothers partition, they take equal shares. Each branch of the family takes per stripes, while members within a branch take per capita. The ordinary rule is to partition according to the family's condition at the date of the suit. Let's look at an illustration. If a dies leaving a son B, 2 grandsons C1 and C2, 3 great-grandsons F1, F2, F3, and 1 great-great-grandson K, there are 4 branches. However, K is outside the coparcenary, so the property is divided into 3 parts. B takes 1 3, C1 and C2 share 1 3 equally, each getting 1 6, and F1, F2, F3 share 1 3 equally, each getting 1 9. This example shows how shares are calculated based on family structure. Another example, a dies leaving 4 grandsons and 9 great-grandsons. The property is divided into 2 branches, each taking half. Within B's branch, D and his sons each take 1/8. In C's branch, E, F, and G's subbranches divide their half into thirds, with E and E1 each getting 1/12, F and his sons each getting 1/18, and G and his sons each getting 1/24. This demonstrates the complexity of share calculation in joint family. Partition is affected by 2 necessary conditions: formation of an intention to separate and declaration of that intention. The declaration must be communicated to all interested parties, typically the coparceners. Severance of status is effective from the date the communication is transmitted. The Supreme Court has established that a unilateral declaration of intention to separate is sufficient, regardless of whether other coparceners consent. This principle ensures clarity and autonomy in the partition process. Father has the power to divide family property during his lifetime, provided he gives his sons equal shares. This results in separation not only between father and sons but also among the sons themselves. Consent of the sons is not required. However, a grandfather cannot bring about separation among grandsons. If unequal shares are given, the transaction is binding if acquiesced by the sons. Major sons can repudiate unfair partitions, while minors can avoid them upon attaining majority. Partition can also be affected by instituting a suit. For adults, filing a suit for partition is an unequivocal indication of intention to separate, and severance of joint status occurs from the date of suit. The court can divide property by metes and bounds or effect separation of status without actual division. For minors, a guardian can file a suit, and if the court finds it beneficial, the minor's divided status dates from the suit's institution, not the decree. Minor can file a suit for partition through a guardian. If the court decides partition is necessary for the minor's benefit, the divided status is effective from the date of suit. The Supreme Court has held that such suits bring about division in status with the decree confirming the action. If the minor dies, the suit can continue through legal representatives. This ensures minors' interests are protected and their rights are not lost due to age or circumstance. Members of a joint family can appoint arbitrators to divide property, which amounts to severance of joint status from the date of agreement. Insolvency or alienation of a coparcener's share does not automatically affect partition. For example, if a member dies after suit or arbitration, their share descends to heirs, who can continue the suit or arbitration. This method provides flexibility and alternative dispute resolution within the family structure. Partition can also occur by notice, will, agreement, conversion to another religion, and other means. Each method has its own legal requirements and consequences. For instance, partition by notice requires clear communication, while partition by will depends on the validity and terms of the will. Conversion to another religion can trigger partition, as can mutual agreement among family members. These alternatives provide multiple pathways for effecting partition, depending on circumstances. Partial partition can occur with respect to property. Members may divide and sever interest in part of the joint estate while retaining joint status for the rest. This allows flexibility, enabling families to manage assets according to their needs. The intention of the parties is crucial in determining whether partial partition results in continued joint status or complete separation. The law recognizes partial partition as a valid option, provided intentions are clear. Partial partition can also occur with respect to persons. A member may separate from the joint family and have their share ascertained and partitioned off, while remaining coparceners continue as a joint family. The consequences depend on the parties' intentions, which are key in determining whether the family remains joint or becomes fully separated. This approach allows for individualized decisions within the family structure. Under shastric law, partition is generally irrevocable, but exceptions exist. One such exception is fraudulent distribution of property. If a partition is obtained by fraud and the affected person did not acquiesce with full knowledge, the partition can be reopened. This ensures justice and protects members from unfair practices. The law provides remedies for those wronged by fraudulent partitions, maintaining the integrity of the process. If at the time of partition a child is in the womb and no share is reserved, the partition can be reopened. This applies equally to sons and daughters after the 2005 amendment. The law treats unborn children as in existence for partition purposes, ensuring their rights are protected. This provision prevents exclusion of unborn heirs and maintains fairness in property division. An adopted son is entitled to reopen partition if not allotted a share. This ensures that adopted children are not disadvantaged and their rights are upheld. The law recognizes the adopted son's status and provides remedies if their share is omitted during partition. This safeguard maintains equality and justice within the family structure. Disqualified coparcener who recovers from disqualification can reopen partition. This provision ensures that temporary disqualifications do not permanently bar members from their rightful share. The law allows for correction and inclusion, maintaining fairness and adaptability in the partition process. This reflects the dynamic nature of family law and its responsiveness to changing circumstances. Supreme Court has held that a partition effected by members of the Hindu undivided family, by their own volition and consent, cannot be reopened unless obtained by fraud, coercion, misrepresentation, or undue influence. This ruling reinforces the principle of finality and stability in partition, while providing exceptions for injustice. It balances the need for certainty with the protection of vulnerable members. Generally, partition is irrevocable. Once made, its legal consequences cannot be controlled or affected by subsequent conduct of the parties. This principle is rooted in tradition and ensures stability in property division. However, exceptions like reunion and reopening for fraud or omission exist, providing flexibility and remedies for special cases. Understanding this rule is essential for grasping the permanence of partition. Union is an exception to the rule of irrevocability. According to Brihaspati, a member once separated can reunite with father, brother, or paternal uncle. The Mitikshara, Dayabhaga, and Madras schools take this literally, limiting reunion to these relations. Other schools like Mithila and Mayaka interpret the terms illustratively, allowing reunion among parties to the original partition. Reunion requires evidence of intention to reunite in estate and interest. Under Mitikshara, Dayabhaga, and Madras schools, reunion can only occur between father and sons, brothers, or paternal uncle and nephew. Reunions between other relations, such as cousins, are invalid. Mithila and Mayaka schools allow reunion among any parties to the original partition. The law requires clear agreement and intention to reunite, not just living together or joint trade. This ensures that reunion restores the former joint family status. To constitute a reunion, there must be evidence of intention to reunite in estate and interest. Mere cohabitation or joint trade does not suffice. An agreement to reunite is essential, with the intention to preserve former status as joint family members. This legal requirement ensures that reunion is genuine and restores the joint family structure, not just a temporary arrangement. The effect of reunion is to revert the united members to their status as members of a joint Hindu family. This means they regain the rights and obligations of coparceners, and property is held jointly once again. Reunion is a powerful legal tool, allowing families to restore their joint status after separation, provided all legal requirements are met. Partition can be created by a so-called will, where the testator specifies division of property among heirs. The validity of such partition depends on the terms of the will and compliance with legal requirements. This method provides flexibility for property owners to determine the distribution of assets after death, ensuring their wishes are respected. Partition can also be effected by notice, where a member communicates their intention to separate to other coparceners. The notice must be clear and unequivocal, and severance of status occurs from the date of communication. This method allows for straightforward and documented separation, ensuring all parties are informed. Members of a joint family can mutually agree to partition property. The agreement must be clear and accepted by all parties. This method provides flexibility and allows families to tailor the division according to their needs. Mutual agreement ensures harmony and reduces disputes, making partition a collaborative process. Conversion to another religion can trigger partition, as it may alter the member's status within the joint family. The law recognizes conversion as a valid ground for partition, ensuring that changes in personal status are reflected in property rights. This provision maintains clarity and consistency in family law. Consequences of partial partition depend on the intention of the parties. If the intention is to remain joint for the undivided property, the family continues as a joint family. If the intention is to fully separate, the partition is complete. The law emphasizes intention as the main factor, ensuring that outcomes reflect the wishes of the parties involved. Doctrine of relating back preserves vested rights accruing between the date of communication of intention to separate and its receipt. This ensures that rights created during this period are not disturbed, maintaining settled titles and legal stability. The Supreme Court has limited the application of this doctrine to protect vested interests. Severance of status is effective from the date communication of intention to separate is transmitted. The law recognizes unilateral declarations, allowing members to separate without consent from others. This principle ensures autonomy and clarity in the partition process, empowering individuals to assert their rights. Court plays a crucial role in partition, especially when disputes arise. It can divide property by metes and bounds, affect separation of status, and ensure fairness in the process. The court also protects the interests of minors and vulnerable members, making partition a legally supervised event. This oversight maintains justice and order in property division. Maintenance for dependent female members, disqualified heirs, and marriage expenses for unmarried daughters must be provided before partition. This ensures that vulnerable members are not left without support. The law mandates these provisions, reflecting its commitment to social justice and family welfare. Provision for funeral ceremonies of widows and mothers must be made during partition among sons. This reflects the cultural and legal importance of honoring family obligations. The law ensures that these expenses are covered, maintaining respect for tradition and family values. The widow of a deceased coparcener takes the same share her husband had at the time of partition. This ensures financial security and recognition of her rights. The law protects widows from exclusion, maintaining fairness and equality in property division. Maternal grandmothers are entitled to a share only if partition occurs between grandchildren or collaterals and her own children are deceased. She receives a share equal to that of a grandson. This provision ensures that elderly female members are not neglected during partition, reflecting the law's commitment to family welfare. Partition and reunion in Hindu family law are complex processes with significant legal, social, and cultural implications. From the division of property to the rights of various family members, the law provides detailed rules and safeguards. Reunion offers a unique exception, allowing families to restore joint status. Understanding these concepts is essential for navigating family law and ensuring justice and fairness in property division. Thank you for joining us on this comprehensive journey through partition and reunion.